Hey, what's going on, freelancers? My name is the Black Link. And today I wanted to talk, or rant at least a little bit, about the state of in-game and loot in Anthem. You guys know I have been playing this game pretty heavily for the past week or so. Started with early access, made my way through the story, hit in-game, and have been grinding it out in that. And to be fair, I've been having a lot of fun with it. I've put about a little over 50 hours into the game thus far. But I've got some complainings to do about the state of in-game, and in particular loot, and an incident that happened with the game and an update that really started last Friday, went on for a little while, and then was stealthily patched on Saturday. For those of you who are really into the Anthem world, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about, and it is the stealth nerf to loot drops in in-game. Ooh boy, is this one heck of a topic, because I'm really seeing Anthem and some of the Bioware devs making kind of some of the same mistakes that previous developers of previous games like The Division 1, like Diablo 3 at launch, like even Destiny, and Bungie made when it came to the concept of granting players loot way back at the start of some of their games as well. Now, a quick rundown of what happened. Of course, we had the big update come out on Thursday. It was really kind of like a Friday update for the day one patch. We covered the patch notes here. There's a lot of stuff that happened in it. Well, somewhere within that patch, they kind of fudged up some of the loot drop numbers, and what resulted was far more generous loot gains in in-game than what we had previously experienced. Basically, if you had played on Friday into Saturday, you probably noticed a lot more masterworks, a lot more legendaries, and generally a lot more loot drops than usual. This accidentally created an incredible experience. Right now, in-game in Anthem, for all you players who are working your way towards it right now, it basically consists of 3 increasing difficulty tiers beyond hard: Grandmaster 1, 2, and 3, and you get access to those when you hit level 30. And they're basically going to be tied around your overall gear score. You want to be around gear score 400 before you try Grandmaster 1, maybe in the 450s or beyond for Grandmaster 2, and then basically Grandmaster 3 is for like 490 and above. It's super duper hard. But for the most part, you jump into maybe Grandmaster 1, go do some free play, do some world events, run the stronghold over and over again until you can build up masterworks. And let me tell you, once that Friday update went into effect, it was raining loot. Suddenly, running the stronghold was way more than worth it. Of course, in the Friday update, they changed it so that you get guaranteed masterwork drops from beating a stronghold, which is something that most players weren't even considering before then. They would just run through a stronghold, beat the first 2 sections to get the 2 chests, and then dip. So suddenly it was worth it to go through the entire stronghold mission, which is of course what you kind of want to incentivize your players to do, play the entirety of content, not just cheese for quick rewards. And with the accidental changes to loot drops, players were seeing sometimes the upwards of 3 to 4 masterwork drops per run. In some instances even more, and even in free play, running around and doing world events didn't guarantee masterwork drops, but you could go and have a 30 to 40 minute session in free play and walk out with a lot of loot. It was great. We all thought it was by design that the game was supposed to be showering you with loot at in-game, so long as you were actually participating in content. Of course, you can get masterwork stuff in hard mode, but you were really rewarded for grinding things out in Grandmaster 1. So much so that, like I said, people thought that this was just the game by design. It was a lot of fun to head through on Friday and run some strongholds. Myself and a buddy, Nim Plays, were running through there, and we were like, wow, we're getting a lot of loot for completing this stuff. This feels great. This feels right. We feel like we're actually progressing at in-game now, and we may actually be able to challenge Grandmaster 2 and 3 before too long. Well, like I said, apparently that was not supposed to be the way things were. And in a quick hotfix update on Saturday, all of it changed, and now loot drops are scarce at best. In that quick update, Bioware stealthily patched the loot drop rate, seemingly reducing the amount of items you get on average, and steering pretty sharply away from the world space that we had experienced for about an 11-hour period on Friday. Now, one of the biggest problems here is, of course, that they didn't announce that they were going to be making this change, just quietly pushed it into effect, and for a little while they didn't say too much on it. Eventually they did comment on the issue though, and I will read their statement in its entirety here. This statement came from one of Bioware's lead producers for Anthem. Hey, update on what happened here. In our Friday changes, one of the edits we made had the side effect of increasing certain drop chances. This was not intended. Once we identified the problem, we changed it back to how it was before. That was about 11 hours later. Took a little time for that message to make it around internally and to make sure we understood what happened and how to avoid it going forward. It's never our intent to make changes without being transparent. So we wanted to come in here to respond and clarify. Note, we did intentionally change the drop rates of rare items in certain chests per the patch notes we posted. And there we go, so they did officially go in and reduce the drop rates after they were accidentally bounced up in the big Friday update. And personally, I think that might have been a huge mistake. Nothing kills games like this faster than scarce loot drops. This is the same sort of issue we saw with Diablo 3 on its release, Division 1 on its release, even back in the days of Destiny 1, even a little bit in Destiny 2. In a game like this, a looter with the style of play that Anthem has, working your way up to Grandmaster 1 or 2, heading out into free play and killing an ancient titan to only get a white drop and 2 blues doesn't feel good. Powering your way through the Temple of Scar stronghold only to get blues and maybe an epic or 2 doesn't feel good. After the stealth patch went into effect, drops were noticeably worse across the board in in-game, making it feel like a real chore to go through activities in Grandmaster 1 or 2, in the hopes of getting one additional masterwork random drop alongside the guaranteed masterwork you get from completing some of those challenges. And of course, I know some people out there having the argument that, hey, they needed to turn down loot drops because it was too easy for people to get like best in slot and for them to get geared up in in-game. Well, my argument against that would actually be the fact that in-game is going to be all about gear customization, build customization. Anybody who's gotten to Grandmaster level and beyond knows that you can get multiples of the same drop and have all of those drops have different customizations that you can work into different builds. That's ultimately what the in-game of Anthem's going to be like, very much like the Division with creating your gear sets in that game. You might get 2 Truths of Tarsus with completely different stat builds on them. And that, in my opinion, is what's going to be elongating the in-game grind. But like I said, I definitely understand the opinion there. But with the nature of drops in this game, where they all have different randomized stats and roles and all kinds of things like that, I think the system that they accidentally created, where the game kind of showered you in loot so long as you were playing on the hardest difficulties, is far better than what we've got right now, since it provides a more viable reason to play that super hard in-game content. As it stands right now, you have no real incentive to go into Grandmaster 2 or let alone Grandmaster 3. You're better off just running the Tyrant Mine stronghold over and over and over again, since it can be completed fairly quickly and you do get a guaranteed masterwork at the end of that, whereas before, it was just as, if not even more rewarding to run contracts and free play on Grandmaster 2 or maybe even Grandmaster 3 for the higher chance at legendaries. So I guess my point here, my argument is that this game works better when it actually showers you with loot, given the nature of loot drops, how each drop, even if you start getting duplicates, can be completely different from the last with the stat bonuses that they have on them. And that the game felt far more rewarding on Friday when stuff was raining from the heavens in the hardest difficulties than it does now, where it just feels like the only really viable thing to run in Grandmaster 1 is, well, just the Grandmaster 1 difficulty and the Tyrant Mine mission, maybe a legendary contract or 2 if you can get it. Shoot, just as an example, my buddy Nim and I, we played on a legendary contract on Grandmaster 2. It took us like an hour to beat, thanks to being absolutely filled to the brim with outlaw elementalists. Our rewards apiece for that? One masterwork for an hour's worth of time, which meant we should have just stuck with Grandmaster 1 running the Tyrant Mine. It just didn't feel rewarding, and it wasn't a great way to spend our time, especially when compared to the great amount of fun we were having in both free play and when running missions back on Friday. Diablo 3 and The Division at launch both had a huge issue with being a little bit too stingy with high-level loot drops, even in the in-game. It wound up taking a repetitive gameplay system and making it feel more like a chore than it was a game, by not properly rewarding players for the time that they've invested in it. And both of those games turned it around before long, to the point where if you jumped into the Division 1 right now, when you hit endgame, it absolutely showers you with different types of loot, making each mission you face on the highest difficulties more than worth your time. And I really think that Anthem could be just the same. Friday should have been the template for how Grandmasters 1 through 3 work, and I do hope that the Bioware devs are looking at that, plus a lot of the community feedback they're getting right now, and are hopefully considering turning up the dial on loot, at least in the Grandmaster difficulties, to make the in-game experience a bit more rewarding for players. Nothing, in my opinion, kills a looter faster than there not being enough loot. And so I hope we get to see that change sometime soon. But alright freelancers, that is it for my rant. Those are my thoughts on some of the loot changes that have happened in Anthem. Did you get a chance to play on Friday? Did you notice that loot was dropping way more generously then? How do you feel about this? Maybe you have the opposite opinion. Maybe you think, oh no, they shouldn't turn up the dial on loot drops because it would make the endgame too easy. Well, whatever your thoughts are, be sure to leave me yours down in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed the video, feel free to drop a like, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell to stay up to date with all the latest stuff we're putting out. But anyways, I've gone on for long enough about this topic. I'm out for now. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, I am the Black Link. You guys stay frosty.